I'm going to share with you how you can go about doing your own BRR HMO project in this video. My name is Alfred Dzadey. If you don't know who I am, I have built a £4 million portfolio within 3 years consisting of HMOs. So I'm going to share the entire process from start to finish to show you exactly how you can go about executing a BRR HMO project. So just in case you don't know what BRR stands for, that's buy, refurbish, refinance, and obviously HMO, layman terms, is simply a house share. So when you have a property whereby tenants in the house share the facilities within the property, that is usually referred to as a HMO property. So in terms of the process, the first thing I want to talk about is actually understanding how to find deals. So very cliche, obviously, you've got to, when I say deals, I mean property. So being able to find a property that works as a HMO. So as a blueprint for me, when I want to go out there and find properties that suit HMOs, I need to find, generally speaking, a 3 or 4 bedroom house, because I want to usually maximize and try and get as minimum of 6 to 7 or 8 tenants in that house. And so I want to create spacious rooms. And this is not me buying a house where I cram the space in, and that's why I'm looking for the slightly larger houses. I'm looking for a 3 bedroom house or 4 bedroom house. It's a very sizable house, usually 100 meter plus squared minimum, where I can maybe do a rear extension, a loft conversion to even add further space to create more space. So I'm not one of these landlords who crams in people in these properties. You can go on my YouTube and watch previous videos of my HMOs I own and how I've gone about doing this in the space that I create, and you can tell how intent I make these and how luxury these properties are in terms of providing space for people who are looking to rent my properties. So when it comes to finding properties, the key bit I consider and I don't compromise on is location, because again, I'm big on location. Location for me is what allows you to be able to survive in tough markets. When it's a downtown in the market, you want to try and rent your room out. If you haven't bought on the right street, unfortunately, your property will probably have voids, be empty. So location is key. In terms of obviously being able to analyze a deal, obviously you need to kind of understand, okay, how do I go about finding a property, running the numbers behind the deal, i.e. what's the purchase price, what does the refurb cost me to refurb and convert the house into a HMO, and then more importantly, what is the end value on the back end of this. Obviously there's granular costs, financing costs, expenses to make the project happen, but like I'm not going to go into every single detail about that because then we're here for hours. But just to give you an idea, we'll need to run the numbers on the deal for the deal to make sense. And if the deal does make sense, obviously it would proceed to the next step, which is to offer on the property. By offering the property, we're hoping that the seller obviously accepts our offer, and assuming that they accept the offer, then obviously usually what will happen next is a sale of memorandum will be sent over to solicitors to confirm that you've agreed to purchase of the property, and it might be subject to, so if you're going through planning, like what I've done in mine, and planning meaning if you're having to try and maybe create extra rooms outside of the current permitted development rights, you'll then need to go through planning. And generally from a lot of my projects, I've always gone through planning to add more value to the property. So just depends which route you go down. If you're in a non-Article 4 area, then that means that, okay, you can go into that area and buy a house and convert that house directly into a HMO. And if you're in an Article 4 area, that would mean that you can't just go and take a house and convert that into HMO anymore. You have to go through planning to request the change of use from a house into a HMO. And once approved, you can then proceed to converting the house into a HMO. So those are the 2 routes upon obviously going into your investment area and getting offer accepted, all that stuff. Obviously, assuming that you have to go through planning, the next big step would be to get an architect on board. So an architect will come in, measure up the house, tell you what's possible. And for me, I have a big saying, your architect is only as good as you direct them. Obviously, the more you know about how to configure floor spaces and what the potential of a house can be. So you don't need to be an expert in how to transform spaces, but you need to know that within this house, 6 bedrooms are possible. So you can then instruct your architect and say, hey, can you please design a scheme that allows us to have 6 bedrooms? You might not maybe have the exact whereabouts of how that's possible, but again, that's the architect's expertise, right? To go and figure out how that can happen. So they need direction of what you're looking for, and they'll come back and design. And maybe again, like even where to place the kitchen and stuff. Do you want it on the rear of the property? Do you want it in the middle and then use the rear as a room? These are all things that I guess you have to have an idea of how floor plans can look like in HMO, so you can better steer your architect in terms of what you're looking to do. And some of you might just go straight into kind of conveyancing, but for me, I'm trying to manage the time, right? Conveyancing can kind of wait, in my opinion. What takes a bit of time is getting an architect in, scheduling might be a week lead time, 2 weeks lead time to come in, do the drawings. You need the drawings to be able to do the quotes for your build team. So for me, that's like a pacing item. If I've submitted an offer in and I want to confirm my cost, maybe I'm not 100% sure on all the numbers, I need to get the drawings done to at least get quotes from my build team. And obviously planning is the next priority as well alongside. So I kind of do those in parallel The minute I get the drawings, I'm getting a build team in to start quoting on the job and to see what my costs are going to be. Obviously, I'll have an indication of what it's going to be. So I don't expect it to be massively off. It will be thereabouts, and the deal should still work in the sense that I'm usually offering, because again, I've got data sets around what refurb should be costing in that area. And again, if you don't know that, you need to speak to investors in areas to understand what are refurbs costing in that area, to at least be able to plug in that number as kind of like an indicative number going into the deal. And then you look to use that phase of fact finding, i.e. getting quotes to firm up your costs and make sure the numbers that you're going into this deal for actually are the numbers you thought. And if they're deviated, does the deal still make sense? Obviously, if it doesn't, there's no reason why you can't go back to the agent and say, hey, I came in obviously with this mindset of the property being X and the valuation coming back as this and the refurb being as this, but actually upon finding and research further and getting quotes back, the numbers are way off. I didn't realize the roof needs changing completely. That means scaffolding is going to cost me an extra $4,000. Changing the roof as well going to cost me an extra $2-3,000. So that's another $7,000 in cost you didn't think. Windows could all be damaged, all need replacing. Again, assume that the house was good. Whatever the reason is, you can justify. And the idea here is to renegotiate on the price, or if they don't be budged on the price, unfortunately, you're going to have to pull out the sale and say, you know what, it's not going to work for us clearly. So unfortunately, we can't proceed anymore. And that's okay. You haven't really spent any money up to that point. You might have spent some money in architecture drawings, and that's usually like a $1,000 cost, if that. Obviously, the more and more you do this process, the more you have an eye for this and kind of understand, okay, and more importantly, know what to kind of expect in these areas. So you shouldn't really be seeing this problem again. So assuming that obviously we have got the drawings back, we've submitted it through planning. Obviously, planning is a waiting game, right? Because the process to get planning could be a 3 or 4 month duration, could be 5 months, could be 6 months. It's kind of a piece of string in some cases. Generally speaking, for me, I've always seen planning come back within 3 to 4 months. So again, check a council, see what planning portal from when someone submitted an application to when it got approved, and see how long that is taking. That will give a gauge, okay, what to expect in that area. So assuming you got the planning approved, obviously in that stage, you would have had the conveyancing happening. So that all the legal stuff would have happened in the background. You would have also instructed your broker to start looking at the financing costs to be able to fund the deal. So i.e., you've obviously going to give him the purchase price, the refurb cost, and also the end val. And he's going to go out there to lenders and see what financing terms can he get back to you that are favorable for the deal you're looking to do. And they'll propose maybe 2 or 3 options, and you can kind of select which ones you think best make sense based on the numbers that come back from the lender. And then, like I said, fast forward, assuming you got the planning approved, that would again allow the financing to be approved, because sometimes going into these deals, if you're trying to do something where planning is required prior to actually being able to purchase the property, then lenders don't want to lend until the planning comes in. So again, it kind of slows the whole game down. Obviously, this doesn't apply to you if you're just going in and buying a house and being able to go straight in, i.e. a non-article area, or you're not looking to go past 7 bedrooms plus. Then you can just go in and there is no pacing item. The broker will just proceed. There's no planning approval required to be able to do this. So the lenders are going to proceed with lending, and the conveyancing will happen in the background, going back and forth between yourself, the seller solicitors, and the lender solicitors. So that's the process around conveyancing, and also getting a broker to get you the financing, and then obviously getting planning if you are getting planning approved. So assuming that you've obviously had to go through planning, upon getting the planning in place, you would then instruct your valuer to go out to then go examine the property and give you kind of an end valuation of what the property would be. Again, it's kind of different scenarios, right? If you haven't got going through planning, you could just go out there and get the valuation done straight away. In some cases, well, you can also get the valuer to comment on, if you did get the planning, what would the valuation be? So if you didn't get the planning, what does the case study look like? I.e. a 6-bedroom HMO, for example. If you did get the planning for like a 7 or 8, what does that look like as well? So they can comment on the different valuations, so that you save the time of not potentially having to wait for the planning to come in before being able to instruct the valuer. So if you're trying to, again, save some time, then you proceed with that. But again, that's at risk, right? So potentially going to spend another $2,500 on getting the valuation done. And this is usually kind of an advanced red book valuation. This isn't your standard valuation packs you get for like buying a house or something. It's way more advanced. There's a lot more detail behind the investment property you're about to buy. So they're a bit more expensive to be able to get a value out for that. But that would then give you security that, okay, you are making the right move. You've confirmed your purchase price is what you've offered is right. And if it's not, you can go back and renegotiate based on what the value has shown you in the report. And again, your refurb value and your end value as well. If that's, again, changed for whatever reason, you can go back and renegotiate. And people might be fearful, like, well, at this point, how do I renegotiate, right? And reality is the sellers in the mindset that their house is being sold. It's now a matter of time before they get their money for their property. So they are going into this thinking, okay, this is a done deal. And so when you rock up and say, hey, unfortunately you got the valuation back and things weren't as great as you thought, you can now present that to them, and it's no longer your opinion. This is the critical bit. It's no longer your opinion. It's the valuer saying that, who's the professional between both you and the seller. Versus if you went to the seller with your opinion, hey, I think the house is worth X, they're gonna be like, well, I think it's worth X as well. Versus when it's black and white, a professional's written on a piece of paper that this is what the property's worth, they now come to the realization, well, even if they moved on and they wanted to go somewhere else, chances are the person that comes next will have a valuer come and say the same numbers again, because that's what the professionals are saying it's worth. So then they're kind of left in a hard place to kind of negotiate as best terms as possible to keep the deal alive and be as close as possible to the purchase, versus potentially restarting the whole entire process, remarketing the house again, getting a new buyer on board, them going through this whole process again, and they've lost months, right? So the reality is the seller will come to a conclusion that they need to figure a way out between you and them to keep this deal alive. And again, if maybe they're not motivated, then obviously at that point they'll pull out for whatever reason as well. So it kind of works both ways. But generally speaking, they're quite locked in at that point and want to just complete the purchase, and they'll just find a middle ground between you and them. So the next bit is around instructing teams. So this can be your build team. So just kind of getting close to the purchase now. So before obviously the purchase happens, there's a few things we kind of have in place. Building control, structural engineer who's come out to kind of examine the property. They'll have the floor plans from the architect to be able to, again, they'll need to assess any structural changes that need to happen to the property and get that calculation all sent to your build team. And again, your build team will be aware of what needs to go where. And obviously you need to submit that to building control as well as part of the application. So at this point, you have your team assembled, your build team is ready, structural engineer's done the calculation of the property. Building control, I've been locked in to oversee the project in terms of regulations and making sure your build team are doing things correctly. So assuming all of that is in place, then the next step would be to obviously complete your purchase. So obviously congrats at this point if you've done that, to be able to get the money in the bank, to be able to then obviously purchase the property and go through all the queries that the lenders had and the questions that the sellers had, blah, blah. You're now got the keys to the property. Again, usually what would happen is, let's say you complete on a Friday, you'd want to have the builders walk in literally the Monday after, because now potentially you're on an expensive bridge. If you're doing these type of projects, generally speaking, that means that you have a bridge lender on board, and usually interests are quite expensive on these type of properties. So you would have your team in there ASAP to try and go from start to finish of a refurb process. So obviously the next stage being obviously the refurb process. The refurbs, obviously there's several stages within the refurb. So usually when you buy a house, the initial bit, assuming you're doing to the extent which I do, you are gutting out the house completely, i.e. going back to brick on this house, removing chimney breasts, removing walls if you're taking the walls out, and getting the house bare, and obviously then kind of rebuilding again. So we're going to go around rewiring the house with the first fix electrics that will happen at that point. You'd kind of, if you're doing any extensions, you'd have done the foundation, all that stuff as well done. If you're doing your loft conversions or dormers, again, all of that would have been worked on as well in parallel with the first fix being done. And then once all of that kind of structural stuff is done, all the extensions and stuff have been completed, you then kind of move on to your plasterboards going up on the walls. Again, if you haven't seen these stages of refurbs, what I'm talking about, go onto my channel. I have videos on these different stages of the refurb for you to be able to understand, okay, what the different refurb stages. So some of this terminology I'm about to say probably won't make sense, but like I said, if you want to find out more, there's videos on my channel showing you my projects from start to finish, showing you the entire different stages out there when refurbing a property. So kind of coming back to this, assuming obviously you've got the plasterboards on, obviously you'd plaster the walls. So this is you getting the walls prepared so that you can paint them. So once obviously you've got that plaster on the wall and it's been dried up, next thing obviously they'll paint the walls. Obviously there's joinery stuff that's going to be done, skirting boards, door frames, all that stuff will be done. Second fix electrics will start to happen as well. So you're now kind of getting towards the end of the refurb, i.e. you've now got your bathrooms in, your kitchen in, all that stuff is now being locked in. And so you're pretty much near the end of your project. Usually my approach is I don't want to wait to the end of my project. I want to start marketing my property pretty much around 6 weeks or as close as early as possible. For me, the minute the white paint goes on the walls, I want to get agents in there. My letting agent will come in, start to market the property. They'll use some dummy pictures. If you haven't got pictures for your property just yet, they'll have maybe some potential ones that they've got available, matching the standard in which you're looking to put out. Obviously, once you've done more, you have your own. But to start with, they'll have to use someone else's pictures to start with. Or if you've got your own, obviously you can give it to them as well. And they can then utilize that to be able to market the rooms and start getting tenants in there. And the idea is by the time I get to my refurb, I've got the house either fully rented or close enough. We've got 1 or 2 rooms left. And also I would have kicked off the refinance process, because again, I understand that if I wait to the end and kick off the refinance process, that could be an extra 3 months in the process in itself just to get the valuation back and proceed into completion and get a refinance back, i.e. being able to pull back money at the property. So those two are crucial to be done at the same time: getting the properties rented and i.e. marketing it, and then also instructing your broker again, say, hey, we're near the end of the refurb, can you please start to go out for lending on the back end of us completing this project? And then they'll start to do their bits as well. So obviously at this point, you then would have completed your project, and obviously congrats you to get to this point, because the hardest bit's over. For me, the build part is always the biggest risk, and you want to make sure you've got a great build team to come in and do the job correctly, because if not, they are costly refurbs, and if you have the wrong team in there, you're going to spend a lot of money trying to fix issues, or even have a bad team that maybe you have to sack and then replace them, and all this while you are on an expensive bridging loan, which you're only paying these high interest on. So selecting the right team is critical to ensuring this happens. So obviously the last thing on the list is obviously getting the refinance completed. So the big part of all of this is obviously you're doing a value add project, you've increased the value, and you've now have a high valuation on the back end, allowing you to be able to go back to the bank and say, hey, can you please refinance based on this high valuation, and therefore reimburse us back for the money spent up to this point, i.e. our bridge loan, pay that off, pay any money you put into the deal yourself as well. And sometimes you have all your money back out in your hands and to be able to go again. Sometimes you might have 60-70% of that money you put into the deal back in your hands to go again. So you don't always get all the money back out, but you get majority of it. And obviously it depends on how great the deal is, right? Personally, I don't go out looking for money out deals. I go out looking for great deals, and if I come across a money out deal, then amazing, I'll execute, obviously. And that's my approach. So guys, very comprehensive, I guess, quick dive into what to expect. Obviously, hopefully visually you can understand what's happening as well. And I guess to summarize, the process can take anywhere from as little as 6 months from start to finish to maybe even 9 or 12 months. It just depends on several stages, right? The purchase could be 2 to 3 months in duration. If you're going through planning, you might try and slow down your purchase and allow you to get the planning first, which can take like 4 months on its own. And then for maybe the following month after the planning comes in, you complete. So it could be 5 months at that point, even just alone. And then the refurb is literally 4 months. Again, depending on your team, how great they are being able to execute these type of projects. But again, 6-bedroom HMO, I'd like to think 4 months, a capable team, they should be able to complete that. Just 9 months in, and then to refinance to get your money back, we're at 10 months. Obviously, you haven't got planning, you can eliminate the whole 4 months wait. You could be in the project 2 months in. Again, average time frame to buy a property can be 2 months. And then your refurb phase could be 4 months again. So that takes you up to 6. And then refinance. So month 7, you got your money back. House is fully rented, and now you're making money from the property. So that is what you can expect from start to finish on doing a BRR HMO project.